Man, this is really bothering me. Should I review it or not waste my time? This is your job, but it's not worth it. Review it. Don't review it.
Review it. Don't review it. Review it. Review. Don't review. Review. Don't review. Don't review.
Whoo!
I'm not usually one to drop a big deuce on a product, which is why last week when they revealed the Pro X60 and I made my reaction video, I knew I had to pick this up for myself to see if it's actually as bad as it seemed. So let's check out the new Logitech Pro X60 and see all they have to offer for $180. A steep price tag for a wireless 60% keyboard with not a lot to offer. Checking it out, this 60% layout is their first 60% release, making them extremely late to the game. Funny enough, being in disbelief myself that this was their first 60, I had to double check in Google in case I missed one, and that's when I came across a Reddit thread from 6 years ago when someone suggested this, and a Logitech employee said, "I like this idea, hoping our devs make this keyboard in the future." And they did, 6 years later. So what did they give us after all these years? Taking a look around the all-plastic casing here, really nothing special in terms of design. Physical feature-wise, embedded on the right side, you have a gaming mode switch, which just disables the Windows key so you don't accidentally press that mid-game. Then on the top right-hand side are two dedicated buttons for pairing with the wireless Lightspeed dongle or pairing via Bluetooth. A nice and easy pairing process with just the click of a button. Then on the top left side, it has the USB-C port and the power switch. And then my favorite feature of the entire keyboard, and this is no joke, the volume dial on the left side of the case. This is just extremely convenient having it here, so you can adjust the volume mid-game with your pinky finger or without having to take your fingers off WASD. It's a good placement. But physical feature-wise, that's about it. They do include a white accented escape key to their double-shot PBT keycap set and a carrying case inside the box, but unfortunately, that's where all the fun ends. And with this being a wireless keyboard that uses their Lightspeed technology, what I think would have been really cool and innovative, personally, would have been integrating their PowerPlay tech that they use in their mice. This just seems like a missed opportunity to use cool features that they have at their disposal, which actually would have been a cool and interesting selling point. Imagine a wireless keyboard you never have to plug in and charge. There's already tons of third-party companies that make Qi charging pucks like this on Amazon. Just would have been cool. Something new in the keyboard scene. But moving on, taking a look inside, in my unit I have the optical black linears. These are Logitech's new switches, and they do pop out of the PCB, technically a correction from my rant video, although I am right in the sense that this isn't a traditional hot swap keyboard. The PCB here does require the proprietary Logitech switches to be properly seated due to the cutouts of the PCB. Other optical switches that I have from like Gateron and Kale, for example, don't fit. And my biggest gripe with this keyboard at the ludicrous price point are the switches. Despite the fact that they're not Hall Effect rapid trigger, these have some of the worst wobble I've felt. For the box stem construction, that's pretty unusual because ideally, the four sides of the box stem against the switch housing should provide a tight tolerance with all four sides being snug and secure. These do have noticeable play. The switches and keycaps move so easily that just resting your fingers on the caps moves them enough to make a loud, audible, rattly noise. And while this isn't something that you admittedly do with your keyboard, I just want to prove a point of what I mean. Take a listen. That's crazy. Versus the Wooting 60 HE when I do the little shake test. Pretty much nothing. The Razer Huntsman Mini, which has stabilizers in each switch. And then, again, just to rub some more salt in the wound, SteelSeries Apex Pro Mini. 3 massive esports competitors in this scene. I know these optical switches don't have chatter, but they won't shut the hell up. Now, one of the things that I talked about back in my initial rant was the lack of any available information on these switches. And if this is advertised as a pro keyboard for pro gamers, don't you think those pros would want to know the specs of the switches? The site is still not updated with this info, but I was able to find out that these black linears are a 50-gram switch that actuate at 1.8 millimeters with a 4 millimeter travel distance. I personally don't mind a 50-gram linear switch, but again, for the pro gamers this is being so heavily advertised for in that competitive esports space, they're gonna want something that's faster and lighter if they are being limited to these non-adjustable optical switches. But now we'll do a sound test so you could hear how these sound during use. I mean, overall, I feel like it's kind of loud and clanky. There is zero thought to this whatsoever. I don't know, it's just whatever. For $180, it's whatever, which is not what you want to hear. Stabilizers really weren't too bad. I've heard a lot better, I've heard a lot worse. Interestingly, despite there being zero lube on this keyboard, they did some TLC to the spacebar. Popping it off will show these two rubber pads underneath with two little strips of foam inside the spacebar as well. And that's pretty funny because taking a look inside the keyboard, obviously we already know this is not going to be a gasket mount board, it's your standard plastic tray mount. And one of the things Logitech could have done that would have helped out the sound profile tremendously would be a layer of foam between the plate and the PCB, which is Keyboard 101. In an all-plastic keyboard like this, having that layer of absorption between the switch and the plate really would have helped out the sound profile, which makes the fact that they then included a rubber pad on the bottom of the case even stranger. So like they knew enough to give it a try, but then to not integrate the most basic and common plate foam here? We're seeing companies try different flex cuts, tape mods, numerous layers of foam and silicone inside, switch pads. And Logitech gives us one layer. By the way, these pics are all examples of other keyboards that do integrate numerous layers of dampening foam inside, and not one of these costs more than $90. EVA foam, Pyron, all very cheap and inexpensive materials that they could have added inside to help lessen the harshness of these switches and just improve the sound profile. Would have cost them nothing in the end. But instead, they just straight up said nah. Now, even though it's a wireless keyboard, you could still choose to plug this in and use it wired. And even then, this is still limited to just a 1 kHz polling rate. And nowhere in the software can you even change that, despite many keyboards out there from Corsair, Razer, and Asus letting users enable a higher polling rate over the USB connection. But don't you worry, because one of the main selling points of this keyboard is in their software that they call Key Control. Key Control lets you remap any key. Whoa! Whoa! A common feature that's been around is still around. Rebinding, creating macros, enabling layers with the Hypershift mode. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's what Razer called it 7 years ago. Wooting calls this mod tap. If one of your main selling points is remapping keys and making layers, what are you doing? Logitech has enough money and resources to push the limits and give us something new and exciting. Instead, what we've got is an old and boring $180 keyboard, which is just way too much money and it's way too late. If this was $100, I'd say, you know what? That's actually a pretty decent deal because it's an okay keyboard. But for $180, it should be more than just an okay keyboard for that crazy price. In fact, for $175, $5 less, you can get the most innovative, groundbreaking tech in the keyboard scene right now, the #1 gaming keyboard in all of esports, the Wooting 60 HE. Legitimately, this is the #1 most used keyboard amongst all esports players. And why is that? Because it's the fastest gaming keyboard on the market, giving a competitive edge with their Lecker rapid trigger switches. No rapid trigger switches, no power play, no innovation, no thanks.